I'm Tara Calderon, 41, and I built my Navy career in rooms most people never get to see, doing work I could never fully explain. For years, I gave my brother Daniel grace while he dismissed my service as some quiet desk job. But when two strangers humiliated me in an operator's bar and Daniel laughed with them, I made a choice that changed everything. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you kept showing up for? Tell me your story in the comments because you're not alone. Before I get into what happened, let me know where you're watching from. And if you've ever had to stand up for yourself after being underestimated, hit like and subscribe for more true stories about boundaries, betrayal, and reclaiming your worth. What happened next might surprise you. My father never said, "This is who you are." He showed me tools. What I did with them was always my own decision. I grew up in Virginia Beach in a house that ran on quiet. Not the uncomfortable kind, not the silence of people avoiding things, but the deliberate quiet of a man who had been somewhere and came back, changed and decided that most words were unnecessary. Robert Calderon was a Vietnam-era Navy SEAL, retired Senior Chief Petty Officer, and he had been home from the fleet since 1990, when I was 6 years old and my brother Daniel was 3. He never told war stories at the dinner table. He never pinned his medals to anything. He had a set of tools he kept in a cabinet in the garage: compass, maps, a worn copy of Land Navigation Fundamentals, and he used them the way other men used woodworking equipment or fishing gear. They were his, and they were precise, and they were not decorative. I learned to read that house early. I understood that my father's silences were not emptiness, but content, that when he said little, he meant a great deal, and that the right response was usually to stay close and pay attention. My brother Daniel was 3 years and 3 months younger than me, and by the time we were both old enough to notice the difference, it was already a pattern. I stayed close. Daniel moved away. Not out of disrespect. He was a child, and children have their own orbits. But the pattern was there from the beginning, like a compass bearing that was slightly off, small at the start, wider as the distance grew. In the summer of 1995, I was 11 and Daniel was 8, and our father called me out to the backyard one Saturday morning with his military compass and a hand-drawn map of the neighborhood. He did not call Daniel. He called me because I was standing close enough to hear him. That was usually the reason. He spread the map on the wooden picnic table and set the compass on top of it and told me we were going to learn to take a bearing. He showed me how to hold it level, palm flat, elbow in, not letting your body's magnetic interference skew the reading. He showed me how to identify a landmark, align the needle, and read the degree marking. He was precise the way surgeons are precise. Not showy, not performative, just exact. I got it wrong the first time. I got it wrong the second time. On the third try, I shot a bearing from the back fence to the garden shed, and it came out exactly. My father looked at the reading, looked at the shed, and nodded once. That nod was the equivalent, from Robert Calderon, of a standing ovation. Daniel was on the back porch with a model truck. He watched us for about 2 minutes, decided it was not for him, and went inside. He was 8. That was fine. But the sequence was already in place. I leaned toward the thing. Daniel moved toward something else, and our father taught accordingly. The backyard lesson was not a ceremony. It was a Tuesday morning truth about who we were at that age. It would take another 30 years for Daniel to understand what he had moved away from. In October of 2001, I was 17, a senior in high school, and the Naval Academy application was spread across the kitchen table. I had been working on it for 2 hours when my father came in and sat across from me with a newspaper he was not reading. He was watching me work. My mother, Elena, was at the stove, 52 years old that fall, a retired school teacher who understood the value of leaving a room quiet when a person needed it. Daniel came through the kitchen, saw the stacks of paper, said, "That looks like a lot," and went to watch television. My father waited until the sound of the television settled. Then he said, "The ones who do the quiet work, that's who gets there." He went back to his newspaper. I wrote for another 40 minutes. It was the most precise thing anyone said to me about my career, and it was said before I had a career. He was not comparing me to Daniel. He was simply naming what he saw, the way he named landmarks when he was teaching navigation. He saw the bearing, he said the degree. That was all. The Naval Academy appointment came by mail in June of 2002. I read the letter standing at the kitchen counter, set it down, and told my parents. Elena teared up immediately. My father read the letter front to back, folded it along its original crease, and handed it back to me. His hands were not quite still. I noticed. He did not say anything, but his hands told me what I needed to know. At dinner, Daniel was told. He was 15 that June, easy in the world in the way of a 15-year-old who has not yet discovered what anything costs. He said, "So you're going for 4 years?" I said yes. He said, "That's a long time," and asked what was for dessert. I did not hold it against him. He was 15. I filed it the way I was learning to file all the small calibrations of the people I loved, and I went back to my application materials that night and finished what needed finishing. The summer before I left for Annapolis, my father and I sat in the backyard 3 different evenings. He asked questions about logistics, about what I thought the first weeks would be like, about whether I was prepared for the physical requirements. At the end of the 3rd evening, he said, "You'll be fine," and went inside. That was the most reassurance he had ever given me about anything. I was 18, and I understood it completely. 4 years later, in May of 2006, I was commissioned as Ensign Tara Calderon, United States Navy. The ceremony was in Annapolis. My father had asked formally, through the right channels, to pin my gold bars himself. Nobody said no. During the ceremony, in the middle of the crowd and the noise and the blue Maryland sky, he held my face in both hands for 3 seconds, the way he used to when I was very small. He was 58 that year, and his hands had the same steadiness they had always had. He stepped back. He did not smile for the photograph my mother took. He did not need to. At a diner near the academy afterward, Daniel looked up from his menu and said, "You know you could have just enlisted, right?" He said it casually, the way people say things when they do not understand the weight of what they're commenting on. He was 19. He had no framework yet for what 4 years at Annapolis cost or meant or produced. My father set his coffee cup down with the careful deliberateness of a man choosing not to respond. My mother changed the subject. I did not react either. I was 22 years old, and I had my father's gold bars on my shoulders, and I knew exactly where I was going. That knowledge was enough. It had always been enough. It would take Daniel 20 more years to understand what I already knew that afternoon. The thing is, I was not waiting for him. That part is important. I was not moving through my career while holding space for Daniel to catch up. I was simply moving. What he did with the distance between us was always his own decision, the same way the tools were always mine. Daniel Calderon enlisted in January of 2011. He chose boatswain's mate as his rate, reported for boot camp 3 weeks after announcing it at a family dinner. And for a brief window, the Calderon family felt, for the first time in a long time, like all its parts were moving in the same direction. I was 26 that winter, a full lieutenant with 4 years of commissioned service and growing responsibilities in Naval Special Warfare support operations, stationed in Virginia Beach, and beginning to move toward the kind of work I could not yet describe at a family dinner table. Daniel was 23, starting at the bottom of the enlisted side. I congratulated him and meant it completely. I told my mother later, helping with dishes, that I was glad he went in. That part was never the problem. The dinner itself was warm. My father was 63 that January, slower than he had been, but still exact in the way that mattered. He asked Daniel one question. "Why that rate?" Daniel said, "Ships. I like ships." My father nodded slowly and picked up his fork. It was not a ringing endorsement, but it was not dismissal. It was a man registering a choice and deciding it was sufficient. That dinner was the last time the 4 of us sat together at full ease. The cancer diagnosis came 2 years later. By the time Robert Calderon died on September 12, 2015, the shadow of what was coming had already changed the texture of every family gathering. He was 67 years old. The cancer had been slow and then fast. I took compassionate leave and arrived within 24 hours of the call from my mother. Daniel had duty obligations that delayed him. He arrived 3 days later. By then I had already had the conversation I needed to have. My father was coherent but tired. He held my hand at one point and said, with the kind of effort that made every word cost something, "Keep going." 2 words. I have carried them every day of my career since. Daniel gave the eulogy at the funeral. He was 28 then, petty officer 3rd class, and he was a genuinely good speaker. Warm, detailed, honest in the way that people are when they have lost something real. He told the story of their father's life with care. but in the last third of the eulogy, he said something I have thought about many times since. He said, "My father taught us that real service is personal. It's something you carry every day, no matter where you are." He said to us, as though the compass lessons had been for both of them. I sat in the front row and listened. I did not correct him. He believed what he was saying. That was the problem. Not that he was lying, but that he had authored a version of the family history in which the distribution of weight was more even than it had ever actually been. Without our father present to calibrate quietly from the other side of the table, the narrative was now Daniel's to write. He began writing it immediately. By November of 2018, I had been a commander for just over a month. 05, director of the Joint Targeting Cell at Naval Special Warfare Command. A position that required a clearance level I could not reference by name at a family dinner table. My work had moved into the kind of specificity that existed entirely behind walls I had no permission to open. Every accomplishment I achieved lived there, real, documented, consequential, and invisible to everyone in my personal life. Thanksgiving that year, Daniel had been in the fleet for 7 years. He was petty officer second class on a destroyer, rotating between port calls and deployments and the physical, present, describable life of an enlisted sailor. He was good at his job. He was also, by 2018, fluent in the language of his own experience in a way that left no room for mine. He told stories for an hour at dinner. Naples, a firefighting drill. Something funny in the bosun's locker. He was entertaining. He could always hold a room. I laughed where the story called for it. We were clearing the table after dinner when he said, "Must be nice having the same desk every morning." He said it lightly. He said it as a joke. He believed it was a joke. I smiled and put the plates in the sink. I have replayed that moment many times, not because it wounded me in the way he might have expected, but because it was the first time the dismissal was audible. He had been building toward it for years, the slow accumulation of a narrative in which he was the one doing something real, and I was the one who had settled. He had no malice in him when he said it. That made it worse. Malice requires awareness. He simply did not know, because I could not tell him. That is the particular mathematics of a classified life. The silence I was legally required to maintain became, in Daniel's accounting, evidence of a quiet existence. He filled the silence with whatever explanation fit the shape of the space. He chose a desk job. He chose it so many times over so many years that by January of 2023, it had become reflex. He told a shipmate his sister did Navy logistics. I was on the phone with him when I found out. One of our regular monthly check-ins, the calls that maintain the form of a relationship without requiring either of us to examine its substance. He mentioned it casually. "Is that what you told him?" I asked. "I mean, what am I supposed to say?" "She has a classified job I'm not allowed to know about." A pause. "Whatever you think is accurate," I said. He changed the subject. "The thing about a classified life is that silence is both necessary and convenient for everyone around you." He stopped asking. I stopped waiting for him to. It was not a crisis. It was an arrangement that allowed us both to maintain a version of a sibling relationship requiring very little honesty to sustain. I was a commander building target packages that determined whether men came home from mountain villages in Afghanistan. My brother thought I filed reports. I looked at the inside of my forearm after I hung up. The Oracle 9 tattoo, small and black, 3 crossed compass needles around the numeral 9, was there the way it had always been there. I rolled my sleeve back down. I went back to work. Some distances are not made by movement. Some of them are made by staying exactly where you are while the other person decides not to look. It is a Friday evening in November of 2025, and I am 41 years old, and I am at my desk at Naval Special Warfare Command at 4:30 in the afternoon, closing out a target package review. Daniel's destroyer is in port for the week. I text him, "Dinner tonight?" He agrees. I suggest the bar near Dam Neck. He says fine. I close my laptop. I change out of my service uniform into jeans and a dark flannel, a motion so habitual it requires no thought. I drive to the bar. I am not nervous. I am not engineering anything. I choose that bar because it is on the way, because I have been going there for 8 years, and because I do not rearrange my life around what other people assume about me. Daniel is already there when I arrive at 7:14. He is 2 stools from the end of the bar with a beer in front of him, comfortable in the easy way he has always been comfortable in rooms. He looks up and nods. I nod back. At the far end of the bar, 2 men. I clock them in approximately the time it takes to cross the threshold. They are clearly operators, not because of what they are wearing, which is civilian, but because of how they sit. The posture of men who have mapped every exit before they ordered their first drink. The way their attention moves across the bar when someone new enters, not rudely, just efficiently. I know that posture. I have worked alongside it for 8 years. Senior Chief Petty Officer Mason Corda is 47 years old, born October 4th, 1978. E-8, East Coast SEAL, Naval Special Warfare. In the spring of 2022, his troop was in an L-shaped ambush in a mountain village outside Khost, Afghanistan, with no clean exit and a second element of the ambush closing from the north. A targeting call came down with enough precision and enough speed to redirect their exfiltration route before the trap fully closed. 5 men walked out of that village. Mason has known for 3 years that someone built that package. He does not know my face. Petty Officer First Class Eli Rouse is 34 years old, born August 22, 1991. E6, East Coast SEAL. In May of 2024, during a target rehearsal, he was briefed on the Oracle 9 designation. Not a name, not a face, just a call sign with a clearance tier attached to it. 8 days into the operation that followed, a voice came over the radio and redirected his fire team 30 seconds before they would have hit a compromised breach point. All 4 members walked out of the village. Eli spent 18 months knowing that voice existed and not knowing whose it was. Mason clocks me in approximately 3 seconds and makes his assessment. Civilian, wrong place. It is a reasonable assessment. I am in jeans and a dark flannel. I am a woman in a bar built for operators, and I have given him no information to suggest otherwise. He is wrong, but he is wrong in the way that most people are wrong about me. He looked at the surface and drew a conclusion, and the conclusion fit. Wrong zip code, sweetheart. This place is for operators. Eli snickers into his beer. Daniel laughs. It is small, barely there. A slight exhale, a flicker at the corner of his mouth. He does not look at me when he does it. He looks at his beer, but he laughs. He is sitting 2 stools from me, and he has known me his entire life. And when 2 strangers decide I do not belong in a room, he chooses their side. That is the moment I keep coming back to. Not Mason's comment. Mason did not know me. Mason is wrong and will correct himself fully within 4 minutes, the fastest and most complete correction I have ever witnessed. But Daniel knew me. Daniel has always known me. And in a fraction of a second, with strangers present, he chose theirs. I ordered a whiskey, neat. I do not look at Mason or Eli. I do not look at Daniel. I roll up my left sleeve to check my watch, a habitual motion, the same one I have made 10,000 times. The inner forearm is visible, a small black tattoo, 3 crossed compass needles arranged around the numeral 9. Eli Rouse sees it. I watch it happen. His eyes drop to my forearm, and everything in his face changes, not dramatically, not loudly, but completely, the way light changes when a cloud moves. He has been briefed on this tattoo. He knows the specific mark of Oracle 9 personnel, the highest access tier of the Joint Targeting Cell. He spent a target rehearsal understanding that the person who wore it had kept his fire team alive. His glass slips from his hand and hits the bar. It shatters. Jesus, Oracle 9, that's you. The bar does not erupt. Bars do not erupt when real things enter them. They go quiet, the particular specific quiet of a room full of people who understand on a cellular level when something serious is present. Everyone had been going about their evening. Now they are very still. Mason looks at Eli's face. He has known Eli Rouse for 3 years, and Eli Rouse does not drop glasses. Mason also knows the Oracle 9 designation, not from a briefing, but from a mountain village outside Khost in 2022. From the targeting call that redirected his troops' route before the ambush closed, from the 5 men who walked out because someone built a package with enough precision to see the trap before it finished. He stands up. He walks the full length of the bar. He stops 2 feet from me. The room is still quiet. Ma'am, Senior Chief Corda, I owe you my life and 4 other men's. I'm sorry. I do not make a speech. I do not accept the apology from the theater. I nod once, tell him to sit down, and finish my whiskey. Daniel is on his stool, 2 spots away. He has not stood. He has not moved. He has not said a single word to me or to the 2 men who just rearranged their entire understanding of this room around his sister. Daniel laughed before they did. That was the part I kept coming back to. Not Mason. Mason didn't know me, but Daniel did. We walk out into the November cold at around 8 o'clock. The parking lot is lit by 2 overhead lights and the ambient glow from the road beyond. Neither of us speaks for the first 20 feet. We stopped near my car. Daniel's hands are in his jacket pockets. He is not going to apologize tonight, not in the way he needs to. He has not yet arrived at the version of himself that knows exactly what to apologize for. He is still processing. He will be processing for a while. He asked the first honest question he has directed at my career in years. It cost him something to ask for it, and the cost is visible on his face in the cold parking lot light. How long has this been going on? He means Oracle 9. He means all of it. How long has the work been this? How long has he been wrong? How long has the silence between us contained something this large? I look at him for a moment. I do my job, Daniel. I get in my car. He stands in the parking lot and watches me drive away. I do my job, Daniel, is not evasion. It is the most complete answer I am authorized to give, and also the most complete answer I am willing to give. The question, in some form, has been available to him for 8 years. He had the access. He chose not to use it. He did not ask what my work meant to me, what it cost, what it produced. He decided the answer was a desk and a routine, and the decision fit his narrative better than the alternative. It became urgent only when 2 strangers made the right answer unavoidable. I am not cruel. I am done translating. At 9:30, I am home. I pour a second whiskey, not because I need it, but because the evening earned it. I sit at my kitchen table near the window. I do not call anyone. I do not text Daniel. I do not replay the bar in the detailed way that people replay things when they're trying to change the outcome. The outcome is not changing. The bar happened. Daniel laughed. Mason walked the length of the bar and apologized. Daniel sat 2 stools away and said nothing. Those are facts now, and facts do not benefit from being replayed. I've spent 8 years making decisions I couldn't explain to the people who mattered. One night at a bar wasn't going to change that math. I wasn't angry. I was tired in a different way than usual. The way you're tired when something you've been waiting to happen finally does. What I do not do that night, and what I think matters, I do not call my mother. Elena would listen without judgment and say something quiet and precise, the way she always does, but calling her would mean narrating the evening, and narrating the evening would mean finding language for Daniel's laugh that I am not ready to produce yet. I am not ready to make it a story. It is still just something that happened. I sit with that. I drink the whiskey. I watch the lights from the street make patterns on my kitchen ceiling, and I let the evening be exactly what it was, without arranging it into something more manageable. My father used to say that the hardest navigational errors to correct are the ones where you only realize you've drifted after you've already traveled a long distance on the wrong bearing, because then you have to account for all of it. Not just where you are now, but how far off course you've moved, and how long it took you to notice. Daniel noticed tonight. How he accounts for the distance is still to be determined. On Monday morning, I am at my desk by 07:30. The same target package from Friday is on my screen. The same classification headers, the same call signs that do not leave this room. By Wednesday, Renata notices the particular texture of my quiet. She is 45, a commander, and she has been working in the joint targeting cell since 2018. She knows my rhythms the way anyone knows the rhythms of a person they have worked beside for 7 years. She sets her lunch down across from me. You went somewhere this week. You want to tell me where? Family stuff, I say. She nods. She does not push. That is one of the reasons I have always trusted her. She knows the difference between asking and prying, and she has never once crossed that line. We go back to our respective screens. In an hour, she will come back with a correction on one of my analysis headers that I have been meaning to address for 2 days. And we will talk about operational timelines for 20 minutes, and the week will proceed exactly as it always proceeds. That steadiness is something I have built carefully over 8 years, and I am grateful for it. In the particular way, you are grateful for things that were not given to you, but constructed by your own hands over a long period of quiet work. The work doesn't change because someone finally sees it. It doesn't need to. That was the point all along. A week after the bar, Daniel texts once, "Hey." I do not respond. On the Thursday that follows, I am at my kitchen table with the brass compass my father gave me in the summer of 1995, the same compass from the backyard lesson, the one that has lived in my desk drawer for 20 years and still reads true. I turn it in my palm. I am not sentimental about it. I carry it because it works. I carry it because it is the first tool I was ever taught to use correctly, and because correctness is the standard I have applied to everything since. My father used to say, "Know where you are, know where you're going, the rest follows." I always thought that was about navigation. It took me a long time to understand it was about everything. The compass sits on the table. The apartment is quiet. The whiskey glass is empty beside it. I sit with it for a while, not trying to solve anything, not constructing a plan for what comes next with Daniel. There will be a next. That is simply true. What it looks like and when it begins and who moves first, those are not things I can determine tonight. What I can determine tonight is exactly what my father taught me to determine. Where I am. I know where I am. I have always known where I am. That has been the one constant in a career built on information that no one else could carry. The week is behind me and everything ahead is mine, not because anyone gave it to me and not because anyone finally acknowledged it, because it has always been mine, because I have been doing the work for 8 years, regardless of who was watching, or wasn't, or thought they understood what the work was. My hand is flat on the kitchen table, the compass in my palm. The apartment is quiet, and the week behind me and the road ahead exactly as clear as it has always been, bearing confirmed, needle steady. I make no declaration. I issue no ultimatum. I simply stop performing normalcy, and for the first time in our adult lives, the silence between us is entirely on my terms. I work through Thanksgiving. I am at my office by 0800 on November 27th, a federal holiday that gives me 6 uninterrupted hours on a time-sensitive project. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I send Daniel one text. "Hope it was good." He replies 70 minutes later, "Fine." The shortest exchange we have had in our adult lives. I do not follow up. This is not punishment. I want to be precise about that. Punishment requires the intent to cause suffering as consequence. And that is not what I am doing. I am stopping a habit. The habit of making myself available to manage the ambient discomfort of our family's social dynamics. The habit of providing the generous questions and filling the silences and supplying the forward motion that kept our conversations from going flat. I had been the infrastructure of our relationship for a very long time. Thanksgiving was the first day I stopped maintaining the infrastructure and waited to see what was underneath. I skipped it because I wasn't ready to sit at a table and perform normalcy that wasn't there anymore. I'd done that before. I was done doing it. My mother called that afternoon. Elena's calls are always brief, and to the point. She shares this quality with my father, which is perhaps why their 37-year marriage was so quiet and so functional. She did not ask why I was not there. She knew. She said, "Are you working?" I said yes. She said, "Good." And we talked for 7 minutes about a neighbor's new fence and a book she was reading, and she did not mention Daniel, and I did not mention Daniel. And when we hung up, I understood that my mother was doing what she has always done best, giving me the room to handle my own life on my own terms, while making sure I knew the room was warm and the door was open. I ate dinner alone that evening at my kitchen table with a meal I had put together from whatever was in my refrigerator. Nothing elaborate, nothing that required effort beyond what the evening called for. I have never needed Thanksgiving to feel like anything particular. It is a Thursday with good intentions. What I need is uninterrupted time on work that matters, and I had that. On December 5th, Daniel calls. I picked it up. He asks how work is. I say busy. He asks about Christmas. I say I might be working. He says okay. We hung up after 4 minutes. No confrontation, no warmth either, not the warmth I had always supplied. The filling in, the generous questions, the forward motion that kept us from sitting in the silence of what we were not saying. All of it is absent now, and its absence has a shape. He can feel it in the pauses where I used to do the work. I used to do so much of the work. He called. I answered. That was still true. But the old version of us was over, and he could feel it too. On December 8th, aboard his destroyer in Norfolk, his shipmate Marcus Webb asks about Daniel's family over a meal. Marcus is 35 years old, petty officer first class, a boatswain's mate who has been Daniel's closest friend aboard the ship for 2 years. It is a genuine question between shipmates who know each other well. Daniel starts talking about his sister and stops. Does she do anything cool? Marcus asks. Daniel pauses too long. Yeah, he says. She does. Marcus waits for more. It does not come. For 3 years, Daniel's answer to that question was a variation of desk job, said with a small laugh. He cannot say it now. The bar is still in him. He does not yet have replacement words. He only has the absence of the wrong ones. That is a start. It is not enough yet, but it is a start. And Marcus, who is perceptive enough to know that Daniel stopped mid-sentence for a reason, does not push. He simply nods and changes the subject, and Daniel is grateful for it in the way you are grateful for small mercies when you are in the middle of reckoning with something large. On December 18th, I am at the Navy Exchange running errands before the holiday weekend. Mason Corta is in the same aisle. He almost does not approach. I watch the decision happen. A senior chief who walked a bar's length to apologize to a commander is not the kind of man who pretends not to see me in a store 2 weeks later. He approaches. He starts to say something, a follow-up to the bar, some elaboration, some extension of what he gave me that Friday evening. I stopped him. We're good, Senior Chief. He pauses. I know. I just wanted to. I know. He nods. We go separate ways. I do not need more from Mason. He gave me what he had to give, and it was complete. He came to me directly, without prompting, without self-preservation, said exactly what needed saying, and accepted my response without requiring anything further in return. The contrast between him and Daniel is not one I hold as a weapon. But contrast is sometimes the clearest way to name a thing. Mason found his way to me in 4 minutes. Daniel is still finding his way, and it has been 6 weeks. That distance is real now, and it has weight. Something that used to hold is no longer there. Without it, the distance has a kind of gravity that Daniel is only beginning to feel the full pull of. He's on his destroyer in Norfolk, and what he is feeling is not me being difficult. It is me being honest, for the first time in a very long time, about what I am and am not willing to sustain. The holiday weekend passes quietly. I do not call my family. I do not go to parties. I run, I read, I work through a long-deferred administrative file that has been sitting in my personal queue for 3 months. On Christmas morning, I call my mother, and we talk for 20 minutes, and she tells me the neighbor finished the fence. I tell her the work is going well. We say we love each other, and we hang up. It is a complete Christmas. Completeness does not require being large. I walk out of the Navy Exchange into the December cold, coffee in hand, not hurrying, the automatic doors closing behind me. The air is sharp and clean. The bearing ahead of me is clear. I keep moving. That is all I have ever done, and it is all I intend to keep doing. Forward, without ceremony, without announcement, with the compass reading true and the bearing ahead of me exactly as clear as it has always been. January of 2026 arrives with the particular steadiness of a Virginia beach winter, gray and cold and relentless. The silence between Daniel and me has settled into something more permanent than I expected. Not hostile, just present, the way the shape of a missing thing remains present. I am at my desk by 0700 every morning. The work is the same: target packages, analysis reviews, coordination with units I cannot name in a building I cannot describe to civilians. The work has always been the same. That is one of the things I have always valued about it. It does not need me to feel a certain way to do it correctly. It requires precision and sustained attention and the willingness to carry classified information that I can share with almost no one. I am good at all three. Daniel, on his destroyer in Norfolk, is doing his own sitting. On January 9th, he is in the mess hall when the conversation turns, the way conversations in enlisted spaces near Virginia Beach sometimes turn, to naval special warfare and precision targeting. Someone says that the quality of targeting intelligence is what separates the operations that come home from the ones that don't. They use the phrase, the voice on the radio, in the general respectful way that people use it when they are talking about something real they cannot see. The Oracle 9 designation is referenced by name, not in detail, just as a call sign, circulating the way legends circulate without faces attached. Daniel says nothing. He eats his meal. He has heard the Oracle 9 designation before. He heard it in passing 2 years ago and filed it the way enlisted sailors file the call signs of intelligence assets. As something real, operating somewhere above his clearance level, adjacent to his world but not connected to it. He never connected the call sign to his sister. Not because the connection was unavailable, because he was not looking for it. I found out later he'd heard the name before he walked into that bar. He just never put a face to it. That was 3 years of not looking closely enough. On January 14th, at 2200 hours, Daniel is alone in his rack with a spiral notebook. He has been writing for 3 nights. He crosses something out, he writes it again, slightly differently. He crosses it out again. He closes the notebook and stares at the overhead of his berthing. He picks up his phone, types something to me, and does not send it. He closes the phone. He told me later that he'd been writing for 3 weeks. Pages. He said he kept starting with explanations instead of accountability, and every time he noticed, he'd cross it out and start over. That detail matters to me. Not because it absolved him, it does not, but because it told me something true about the effort. He was trying to do something he had never been required to do, which was to put his actual accounting of himself on paper without an audience to respond to in real time. When Daniel charmed a room, the room charmed back. The notebook did not respond. He had to sit with what he had written and decide if it was honest, and when it was not, he had to start over. He did that for 3 weeks. That is not nothing. On January 28th, he calls our mother. Elena Calderon is 73 years old, born July 22nd, 1952. A retired school teacher who has spent her adult life seeing both her children clearly. She is still in the Virginia Beach house where we grew up. He has not called her in 2 months. He asked what I was like when I was young, what Robert used to say about me, whether I ever seemed uncertain about what I wanted. Elena answers without ceremony. She was always the one who knew exactly what she was going to do. You were the one who had to figure it out. That was never a bad thing, Daniel. You just had to actually do it. He does not say much after that. She is not judging him, but her clarity is the thing Daniel has been avoiding. The simple, factual difference between his sister and himself in how they moved through the world. I had always known where I was going. Daniel was still figuring it out. Elena is not worried about whether he will get there. She is simply stating what is true. On February 3rd, I file my promotion package for 06 consideration. I hand it to Renata to review for administrative completeness. She flips through it, 7 years of working beside me, and she still cannot read most of this file. She pauses on a commendation page where the operational context is almost entirely redacted. Black bars across the substance of what I did. The achievement is legible, the work that produced it is not. You know what's strange about working next to you? I know what you did broadly, but I still can't read half of it. That's the job, I say. I know, it's a lot to carry alone. It is, I say. I take the package, sign the cover sheet, and submit it. 8 years of work summarized in a document that even the people who know me best can only partially read. That is, in some sense, the whole story of the last 8 years. Not a complaint, an accounting. The work required this. I agreed to that requirement the first day I took the role. I still agree with it still. In his rack that night, Daniel's notebook sits on the shelf above him. He keeps a photograph of our father in dress uniform propped beside it. The one from before the retirement, Robert Calderon, as a young man who had been placed and came back carrying them. Daniel is looking at the photograph, the way you look at something you have misread for a long time and are only now beginning to read correctly. He is close. He is not there yet. But he is close, and the direction he is moving is the right one. February is short and cold, and Daniel Calderon makes the call. Not a text, a phone call, which costs more, which is exactly why he chooses it. He has been writing and crossing out for 3 weeks, and he knows from that work that texts allow too much revision. A call commits you to whatever you say in the first 3 seconds. He calls on February 19th, 2026, at 8:14 in the evening. I am at my kitchen table with the brass compass and a cup of tea. My phone rings. I see his name. I let it ring twice. Then I picked it up. I'm not calling to explain myself. I just wanted to say I was wrong. A pause. I know you were, I say. There are no tears, no mutual emotional inventory. Two adults in the first honest frame of a conversation that has been 20 years in formation. The value is in its simplicity. Daniel chose directness over deflection, arrived at it without being asked, and delivered it without requiring me to manage his discomfort while he did. That had never happened before. It happened now, and it is enough to open a door. We talk for 12 minutes. He does not ask me to explain what I do. He does not try to walk back the laugh or explain it away. He says he wants to be better at this. I tell him dinner next time his ship is in Virginia Beach. He says okay. Neither of us mentions our father. The call ends without resolution, deliberately, because there is none available yet, and pretending otherwise would be dishonest. This is not a resolution. It is a beginning. That was new. I do not offer instant closure because there is none to offer. I open a door, the right size for where we are, dinner, a specific occasion, a limited and appropriate beginning. Offering more would be inaccurate. I do not offer inaccurate things. I never have. After I hang up, I sit with the compass for a while. I am not analyzing the call or cataloging what was said and what wasn't. I am simply sitting with the fact that it happened, that he made it, that he said what he said without softening or deflecting, that he accepted my answer without asking for more than I had to give. That is a different version of Daniel than the one who laughed in the bar. The distance between those two versions is real, and it was not covered easily, and he covered it anyway. That matters. I let it matter without making more of it than it is. On March 1st, we have dinner. Not at the bar. A booth in a quiet restaurant where no one knows either of us. Low light, good food, the anonymity of a neighborhood spot that has regulars, but not recognition. We sat across from each other, and for the first time since our father's funeral in September of 2015, we talked about Robert without it becoming a debate about legacy or a comparison of credentials. I had not expected that. I had prepared in the background way that I always prepare for things, noting what was likely to come up, thinking through what I was and was not willing to say, but I had not prepared for Daniel to sit down and immediately be honest. Not dramatic, just honest. He ordered his beer and talked briefly about the ship and then, without transition, said, "I've been thinking about Dad a lot." I said, "So have I." And that was where we started. Daniel tells me a story I have never heard. At first it sounds small. One Saturday morning, our father, a length of line, and a 7-year-old who remembered more than anyone realized. He had kept it private for years, the way people keep the real reasons for things, private, a little embarrassed by their simplicity, afraid that saying them out loud would make them seem insufficient. "I never told you that," he says. "I chose boatswain's mate because of the knots. One afternoon when I was 7, that's the whole reason." I look at him across the table, and I laugh, a real one, not performed. Because what he just told me is genuine, not the curated version of the Calderon legacy, not the shared inheritance from the eulogy, but a small, specific, honest memory. A 7-year-old's afternoon. He built his career on that. There's something deeply accurate about it, about a man who moved toward what he loved, based on a single tactile memory, and is only now learning to tell the truth about how simple and real his reasons were. I tell him about the compass lesson from 1995. He was on the porch with the model truck. I have never told him what that afternoon produced in me, how the act of my father calling me over and teaching me to hold a compass level became the template for everything that followed. He listens the way he did not used to listen, completely, without interrupting, without preparing the next thing he is going to say while I am still talking. I notice that too. It is the most honest conversation we have had in years, maybe ever. We leave the restaurant at 9:30. The March air is cold and clean. We walk to our cars without quite walking side by side. There is still a tentativeness, a careful space between us that is not unfriendly, but is not yet easy, but we are moving in the same direction into the same cold air. That is more than we have been able to say for several months. I will take it. It is the right size. On March 15th, I turned 42. A card arrives in the mail, not a text. An actual card, purchased and handwritten and mailed. 3 more steps than most people are willing to take for a sibling's birthday. Daniel's handwriting, the cramped, slanted script that looks exactly like our father's, a thing neither of us has ever commented on. The card says, 42. You've been carrying this longer than I understood. Happy birthday, T. I read it twice. I put it in my desk drawer next to the compass. He'd never sent a card before, not once, in 42 birthdays. I noticed the card is not grand. It does not contain an explanation or a request for absolution. It simply acknowledges what I have been carrying and marks the day. It is exactly the right size for where we are, which means he is measuring correctly, which means he is paying attention in a way he was not before. That matters more to me than any grand gesture. The sizing is right. He is learning what the right size is. I go to work. The desk is the same. The compass is in the drawer with the card. The work is exactly what it has always been, and somewhere ahead on the calendar there is a list that has not dropped yet, and I am 42 years old, and I know where I am and I know where I'm going. The rest follows. The promotion board season has come and everything has been submitted. Now I wait, not anxiously, but accurately, the way I wait for everything. My life is clarified in the 5 months since November, late March. I have returned from the formal board review period, and I am back at my desk by 07:30, the same time I have been at my desk every morning for 8 years. The list will not drop for several weeks. I do not put my life on hold against those weeks. I do not perform anticipation. I built a target package. I review analysis. I drink the bad command coffee that has never been good and presumably never will be. Renata stops at my door. When does the list drop? End of the month. Maybe sooner, I say, without looking up from my screen. She stands there a moment, deciding whether to say something more significant, and then decides not to, because she knows me well enough to know I'm simply working, not suppressing anything. She nods and goes back to her desk. That is enough. On April 4th, a quiet afternoon, one of those slow Tuesdays that appear unexpectedly in a busy operational month, I open my desk drawer. The brass compass is there. The birthday card from Daniel is tucked against the back corner. Behind the card is a small photograph of my father in his dress uniform from the 1970s before the retirement. A young man who had been places and come back carrying them. I hold the photograph for a moment. I am not being sentimental. I am doing what I always do when I look at things, taking stock. My father never said he was proud of me directly. He told me to know where I was and know where I was going. I've spent 20 years trying to earn the right to say I did both. I think I got there. I put the photograph back. I close the drawer. I return to the work on my screen. On April 10th, I drive past the bar near Dam Neck on my commute. I drive past it most mornings. I have driven past it for 8 years on the way to work. I look at it as I pass the building, the parking lot where Daniel stood in November and watched my taillights disappear. And then I am past it. I do not slow down. I do not do anything particular with my face. I stop thinking of it as the place where Daniel laughed. Now it's just a building on the way to work. That's the difference between time passing and time doing something. The bar is neutral. I processed what happened there without requiring it to remain a wound. That is not suppression. Suppression is when you push something down and pretend it is not there. This is the other thing, the thing on the far side of actually sitting with something difficult until it settles. The bar is just a building. November 7th is just a date. I am somewhere else now. We both are. On April 14th, I sent Daniel a short text. Heads up, something may be changing at work. I'll tell you when I can. He replies within minutes. Okay, I'm here. I read it. I set the phone down. Something was ending. Not badly, just the way a door closes when you finally stop holding it open. Something on the other side was about to begin. I could feel it. I just couldn't say it yet. This is the first time I have sent Daniel any preview of my professional life, even a vague one. Not disclosure, I cannot disclose. But an acknowledgement that something real is coming and that he is someone I want to tell when I can. That required the last 5 months, November in the cold parking lot, December in the short calls, January in the silence, February in the 12-minute phone call, March and the dinner and the birthday card. All of it necessary, none of it wasted. The relationship being built now is not the one that existed before November. It is something more accurate, constructed from better materials, and it is mine as much as it is his. I drive past the bar the next morning and the morning after that. Each time, it is just a building. Each time, the road ahead is clear and morning bright, and I push into it the same way I have always pushed into everything that mattered, without ceremony, without announcement, with the compass reading true and the bearing confirmed. The rearview mirror shows the bar near Dam Neck disappearing behind me. I do not look back. I push forward. I have always pushed forward. That was never going to change. The promotion list drops in late April of 2026, and my name is on it. I am 42 years old, a commander in the United States Navy, director of the Joint Targeting Cell at Naval Special Warfare Command, and on a Thursday morning in late April, the list is published, and I am selected for Captain 06, 4 stripes. The kind of promotion that is not a surprise to anyone who has seen the work and is a complete surprise to everyone who has not. Renata finds out 3 minutes before I do. Her phone buzzes first. She walks into my office without knocking, the only time she has ever done that, and I look up from my screen and she is already smiling. The real kind, not the professional kind. Captain Calderon, that's going to take some getting used to. Give it a week, I say. I am smiling too. Not the kind I make for a room, the other kind, the one that happens before you decide whether to let it show, and then you decide to let it. I let it. It is mine. I earned it across 8 years in a building I cannot describe, doing work I cannot explain to most people I love, for men and women who went into places I never went, but whose lives depended on the accuracy of what I produced. I let the smile be what it is. It deserves to be exactly what it is. Renata says something warm and specific, and I receive it the way she means it, with the full acknowledgement that she has been beside this work for 7 years and sees it clearly. She deserved to find out 3 minutes early. She goes back to her desk. The command continues operating the way it always has, because it does not stop for promotions any more than it stops for anything else. I go back to my desk. My coffee is there, my screens are there. And on the left side of my keyboard, where my admin places physical mail, there is an envelope, my name on the front in blue pen. Daniel's handwriting, the cramped, slanted script that looks exactly like our father's. I know before I pick it up what it is. He'd never sent a letter. Not once in 38 years of being my brother. I knew before I opened it that it was the most expensive thing he'd ever given me. I hold it for a moment without opening it. The morning continues around me, screens, the building's operational hum, the command running as it always runs. He does not know today is the day. He sent the letter when he finished writing it, which was whenever 3 weeks of crossing out and starting over produced something he could seal and mail. The timing is not choreographed. It simply is what it is, because when things have been building long enough, arrivals sometimes line up without being coordinated. That is not magic. It is what happens when people do the work. I open the envelope, 3 pages, handwritten, the cramped, slanted script that looks exactly like Robert Calderon's. I read it slowly. He wrote about our father. He wrote about the bar and the parking lot and the taillights of my car disappearing and what he stood there thinking in the cold while I drove away. He wrote about the compass. He said he remembered it, the afternoon I was in the backyard with Dad, while he watched from the porch for 2 minutes and went back inside. He said he had always known, somewhere underneath everything, that the compass lesson had been for me, not because he was excluded, but because he had walked away. He had spent a long time not thinking about what that meant. He was thinking about it now. He did not excuse the laugh. He named it directly. I laughed, in plain language with no softening, and said he had not understood until he was standing in the parking lot watching my taillights at what the laugh had cost. He said he had spent the months since learning the shape of what he had dismissed. He said he was sorry in the way that people are sorry when they have actually counted the cost, specifically, without theater, in his own particular words. He ended the letter this way. I'm proud of you, T. I should have said it every year. I'm starting now. I fold the letter along its original creases. I put it in my breast pocket. It belongs close. Not in a drawer, not with the compass and the birthday card, the private things I carry alone. This goes with me, against my chest, which is the oldest way humans have always indicated that something matters. He gave me the most honest version of himself he has ever produced, and I am going to carry it. In the afternoon, after the calls from colleagues and the administrative machinery of the selection list beginning to move, I stood at the window in my office. The parking lot outside, the sky above Virginia Beach, the ordinary daylight of a Thursday in late April. 4 stripes are in a small box on my desk, waiting for the pinning ceremony. The compass is in my desk drawer, where it has lived for 20 years. The letter is in my breast pocket. The birthday card is in the drawer beside the compass. The photograph of my father is there, too. I breathe. I say it quietly, to no one, or to everyone, or to my father, or to the 11-year-old girl in a backyard in Virginia Beach who got the bearing exactly right on the 3rd try, and to the father who nodded once and said everything he needed to say with that. I do my job. The same 5 words from the November parking lot. Different now in the way all true things get more true over time, when they are carried far enough. In November, they were a refusal to translate. Now they are something else. A completion, a bearing confirmed accurate after a very long approach. Whatever you carry that nobody else can see, it's enough. You don't have to explain it. You don't have to justify it. You just have to keep showing up. The right people will eventually understand, and some of them will write you 3 pages to prove it. Let that be enough. You've earned the right to let that be enough. My hand flat on the desk. The promotion insignia box to my right, the compass in the drawer below, the letter folded in my chest pocket, the window bright behind me. I know where I am. I know where I'm going. The rest follows. I walked away knowing one thing for sure. I don't need everyone to understand my worth for it to be real. Sometimes the strongest choice is staying quiet, standing firm, and letting people realize the truth on their own. Have you ever had to stop explaining yourself to someone? Have you ever been underestimated until you finally chose yourself? And do you think silence can be more powerful than confrontation? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. If this story resonated with you, hit like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs the reminder. Your value doesn't disappear just because someone failed to see it.